And you mentioned you had a fleet of 50 cars, is that right?
Yeah, it's grown quite dramatically over the last year or so as the company has expanded. As you know, we have been relatively successful and had to go out and employ a number of new salespeople.
It must be nice to be in a position growing at such a rate. Have you noticed any growing pains in the wider business?
Yeah, some. It's perhaps most obvious that our current IT infrastructure is creaking. We're getting close to the limit of the system's capacity, and the MD actually wants to purchase a whole new logistics and distribution system.
Sounds expensive. Does that put a squeeze on budgets elsewhere?
Yeah, you could say it's. I'm told it's going to be close to about £1 million for the new system just to install it. Unfortunately, as in all relatively new companies, balancing cash flow and required investment is one of our constant challenges.
Yes, it's one of the reasons why we get called in to talk to fleet managers to see if there are ways we can help in the operation of the fleet.
All right, well, that's interesting. And what sort of ways are you able to help?
Well, in order to be specific and relevant, I'd like to understand a bit more about how you finance and manage your fleet. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, firstly, how do you finance your operation?
Well, we're something of a rarity here in that we actually own the fleet. It's a model that the MD used when he first set up in order to gain some tax advantages, but it may be that we have outgrown it by now.
In what way?
You only have to add up the figures to see it's an expensive model. We have 50 cars, an average cost of 20k, brought on outright purchasing terms.
So typically what return do you get on resale, and over what period do you retain the cars?
It depends. We've got a mixed fleet, but I would put an average 5k per car due to the high mileage we do, and generally we sell over after 4 years.
So if my sums are correct, that's a rolling 1 million investment tied up in the fleet with a residual value of 250k. What do you spend on operating costs, maintenance, insurance, fuel, etc.?
Top of my head, maintenance currently running 100k a year, insurance 25, fuel bill about 250.
Okay. Do you think that those figures are sustainable? To you, given your current business issues and planned growth?
I know. Clearly, we've got an immediate need to release some of the capital. If we don't do that, we can't compete, full stop. Equally, in the longer term, we need a model that is more in tune with our business needs and flexible.
It's an obvious question, but for clarity, let me ask, which of those costs that you outlined would you most like to reduce?
Well, given the need for investment in the new IT systems, it would be great to release any of that 1 million currently invested in the fleet. The other figures, it would make sense to tackle them in size order.
Have you looked at any ways in which you might achieve that?
Yeah, I think the most obvious would be some form of leasing model, perhaps with a guaranteed residual value.
Yes, that would also enable you to plan for the expenditure through increased visibility of costs and fund it through OPEX rather than CAPEX. Do you have any expectations in terms of how much you think you could save?
Well, I look to your expertise here, but my targets are to realise a reduction of approximately 50% in the current maintenance and fuel bill, and as I said, the release of those sunk costs so we can use perhaps a pay-as-you-go model.
Okay, I understand your desire to release the capital investment. Let me go away and using your figures of 100 million investment in ownership, 100k maintenance, 250k fuel and 25k insurance, work out what I would expect a leasing deal to save you. Is that okay?
That'd be great.
Okay, so let me just play that back to you to confirm my understanding. If you could find a deal with a maintenance service provider who you could operate on a national basis at the point of delivery, this would be highly beneficial in terms of reduced downtime. Would you consider that that would be the most important component of any future arrangement you came to with a provider?
Yeah, I think so. That and ability to deal with a range of makes of car.
Do you have a wide variety in the fleet then?
Yeah, we give the sales force a choice and ended up with everything from Ford to Fiat.
Does that give you particular issues with servicing arrangements?
Yeah, definitely. The local garage doesn't stock a huge variety of parts and regularly has to order parts in, sometimes delaying the return of the vehicle for several days and forcing us to rent temporary cars for the salesman.
How would you like to improve the situation?
Well, there would be some resistance, of course, but I'd love to simplify things by offering a variety of models, but from one car maker. It would be beneficial in terms of simplified contracting arrangement and perhaps quicker overall turnaround at servicing.
Yes, and maybe you could get a better deal on ownership of the fleet, as one car supplier would be contracting for the whole fleet. Let me make a note of both of those. By simplifying the choice in the fleet, it is highly likely that you could simplify your life in managing a smaller set of contracting arrangements, and at the same time enhance the service experience by providing a quicker service turnaround. Equally, you also get better leverage over one provider supplying the whole fleet.
That's interesting.
Can we go on to talk briefly about your day-to-day experience of running this fleet? Firstly, could you tell me how you organise your department to deliver the services?
Sure, it's relatively straightforward. There are only two of us in the office. I have an admin assistant who spends most of their time handling the paperwork and paying the bills. It's a full-time job in itself. I spend my time primarily firefighting operational issues.
Could you expand on that for me? What operational issues do you encounter?
Well, most of the time I seem to be running around trying to sort out service problems, chasing salesmen to get cars serviced, finding pool cars to cover unplanned garage time. Only today I spent 3 hours trying to get a salesman to an important customer meeting on time as his car had broke down earlier in the day, miles away from home.
And is that typical?
Yeah, I guess I spend about 90% of my time firefighting these issues.
If you could change that, what would you prefer to be spending time on?
I don't think there's a good balance in terms of use of my time. Whilst I expect to be dealing with operational issues for some of my time, it would be great to have time to think about the strategic issues around fleet management.
What would be the top 2 or 3 strategic issues you'd like to make progress on?
Yeah, good question. Off the top of my head, I would include, is this the most suitable model of service provision? How do I put flexible arrangements in that can flex with the growth or downturn of the business? And how can I, as a fleet manager, contribute to the green issues that we as a company are majoring on?
Interesting choices. Perhaps we could explore each of those in detail a bit later on. For now, I'm interested in how we could work with you to actually get you the time to consider those issues. If that's okay with you?
Yeah, great.
What happens if you don't free up the bandwidth to allow you to consider those strategic issues?
In simple terms, I run the danger of not doing my job. My MD expects me to at least contribute to these debates, if not provide thought leadership in them. If I don't, what value am I bringing as a fleet manager? He may as well outsource the whole fleet management operation and my job with it.
So there is considerable personal cost associated with not being able to free up your time.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, you could release the bandwidth and provide thought leadership. What does that do for your position here?
Well, clearly I would be in a much more secure position and better able to influence my own progress.
Do you have any thoughts on how to secure more time for yourself and for those activities?
Yeah, I've thought about that. In an ideal world, I'd like to hand over the day-to-day operation and management to a service provider who could provide the service to agreed service level agreements and leave me free to take on that strategic role.
Indeed, I agree with you. If I could just replay that in my own words, you see business benefit in handling operational responsibility out to a fleet provider, providing you have the necessary cover in terms of service level agreements and remain in control of the specification of the service. The benefit would be that you would then have the bandwidth to better specify, guide and contract for a service that meets your future needs of the business.
Yeah, in a nutshell, that's it.
Could you see any particular issues surrounding that handover?